Ever wonder why your absolute favorite movie scenes feel so intensely, undeniably real? We sit in a dark theater or just on the couch in our living room, staring at a screen, completely convinced by the reality of what we're seeing. But here's the secret. The films we love are actually manipulating our senses in a pretty profound way, and they're doing it specifically through sound. It's this hidden illusion, and once you see it, or actually, scratch that, once you hear it, you are never going to experience cinema the exact same way again. Think about this beautiful, kind of philosophical quote from the legendary sound designer Walter Murch. He said, "We gestate in sound and are born into sight." It's so true, right? Before we even open our eyes, before we're even born, we exist in this liquid world ruled entirely by sound. We hear the rhythm of a heartbeat, muffled voices, the rush of breathing. Sight only takes over later. It's like this braggart king claiming the throne the second we're born. But sound is the silent power behind the throne. So, to break down how this auditory power actually works, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll unpack the audiovisual illusion. Then, text as a ventriloquist. Number 3 is emotion and cosmic indifference. After that, sculpting time with sound. And we'll wrap up with the 3 ways we listen. Let's get right into it. Our guide for all of this is the brilliant theorist and experimental composer Michel Chion. His groundbreaking work explores how the marriage of sight and sound permanently changed cinema when it debuted back in 1927. He argues that sound didn't just casually add an extra layer to silent movies. No, it completely rewired how we perceive images. All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the audiovisual illusion and the hidden trick behind it. I want you to imagine cutting the audio from a really intense scene, like the prologue of Ingmar Bergman's film Persona, or maybe the hilarious beach scenes in Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot's Holiday. Without sound, Bergman's visuals completely lose their rhythm, and Tati's upright vacationers just lose all their vitality. It becomes an entirely different, almost empty experience. And this brings us to a fundamental concept Chion coined: added value. Basically, it's the expressive and informative value that a sound actively adds to an image. The brilliant trick here is that the sound creates the definite impression that this emotion is naturally coming from what we're looking at. It tricks us into believing that the image inherently contains that meaning all on its own. And that perfectly captures the core deception of movies. We usually think of a film as just an image and a sound hanging out, coexisting harmoniously. But what is actually happening? The image is being radically manipulated and structured by the sound. Our brains are totally fooled into thinking the sound is just duplicating the visual, when in reality, the sound is dictating, transforming, and literally rewriting what our eyes are seeing. Moving right along to part 2, text as a ventriloquist. Let's talk about how human speech absolutely dominates the audiovisual landscape. It begs a pretty fascinating question. Who is really doing the talking on screen? Because according to Chion, the cinematic image is actually just a ventriloquist dummy. Think about it. The visual itself is completely mute and helpless. It's the spoken word that animates it, focuses our attention, and tells us exactly what to look at. Let me give you a wild example of this from a live 1984 TV broadcast. A TV anchor named Leon Zitrone was narrating an air show. When he said, "Here are 3 small airplanes," the audience saw 3 airplanes. If he had said, "The weather is magnificent," the audience would have totally focused on the cloudless sky. But here's the crazy part. When he asked, "Where did the 4th plane go?" suddenly the audience literally sees the absence of a 4th plane. His commentary wasn't just redundant background noise, it actively structured the audience's vision. We literally see whatever the voice tells us to see. Okay, part 3, emotion and cosmic indifference. Let's see how music completely dictates the emotional reality of a scene. So there's this really crucial contrast between empathetic and animathetic sound. Empathetic music is what we're all used to. It participates directly in the scene's emotions. The strings swell when we cry, the tempo bounces when we're happy. But animathetic music, it exhibits this conspicuous cosmic indifference. Think about the shower running right after the murder in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. That mechanical, totally indifferent sound of splashing water doesn't pause the emotion of the scene. It actually intensifies the human tragedy. It acts as this cold, robotic backdrop to the horror, reminding us of the relentless, mechanical nature of time. Which brings us to part 4, sculpting time with sound. Let's look at how sound forces static or reversible images into an irreversible timeline. Think about playing a video of a peaceful visual, maybe a woman dozing in a rocking chair on a porch. If you play that visual backward, it looks perfectly fine, right? It's completely reversible. But now add the sound of a bamboo wind chime. At 0 seconds, it gets struck, then there's a sharp attack, it fades, and finally hits a decaying resonance. If you play that sound backward, the illusion breaks instantly. Sound temporalizes images. It forces the visual into a strict forward-moving reality, because acoustic sound naturally has an irreversible beginning, middle, and end.
So how does this tie into our perception of speed? Well, here is a crazy fact. Your ear actually processes information way faster than your eye. Because of this, sound editors can pull off this incredible faster-than-the-eye sleight of hand. For example, legendary sound designer Ben Burtt created that iconic dynamic psh sound for the automatic doors in Star Wars. The director could just cut 2 static shots together, one with the door closed, the next with the door open, and thanks to Burt's rapid sound effect, our brains literally see the door slide open. We're totally tricked into seeing visual movement that doesn't even exist on the screen.
And finally, part 5, 3 ways we listen. Let's break down the mechanics of our own perception. Drawing on the work of Pierre Schaeffer, Chion outlines 3 specific modes of listening. Step 1 is causal listening. That's the one we use most, gathering info about a sound source, like, oh, that's a car engine. Step 2 is semantic listening, which is when we decode spoken language or codes, like listening to the news. But step 3 is where the magic happens, reduced listening. This is where you focus purely on the traits of the sound itself, completely ignoring its cause or meaning. True reduced listening forces us to appreciate sound as a physical object, its texture, its pitch, its vibration. It totally disrupts our lazy listening habits. Which leads us to this massive, kind of provocative bombshell from Michel. There is no soundtrack. Now, I know that sounds a bit crazy, but what he means is that sounds don't form a coherent whole on their own, horizontally. Instead, they react vertically with the image. Every single sound, a footstep, a musical note, a word, bonds instantly with the visual right in front of you. They don't exist in a vacuum. They form a brand new unified audiovisual chord in your brain. So, that leaves us with one final thought to close out this explainer. The next time you sit down in a dark theater or fire up your TV, I want you to step out of those passive visual habits. Knowing that your eyes are constantly being manipulated and structured by what you hear, will you watch your next movie with your ears? Try actively listening to the dancing shadows of your favorite films. You might just discover a whole new cinematic universe. Thanks so much for joining me, and keep your ears open.